They hung my stocking, but put his name on it. That's when I knew something was deeply wrong. My name is Ellie. I'm 17, and up until last Christmas, I thought I had a pretty normal family. Not perfect, no one's is, but the kind where you still love each other despite the occasional screaming match over the TV remote, or who finished the last of the peanut butter. But this Christmas my parents replaced me, and they did it with him. You're probably thinking they adopted a baby or something.
No.
They brought in Tyler, a 16-year-old foster kid, 2 days before Christmas Eve, introduced him at the family dinner like he was some long-lost cousin, and then immediately started acting like he was their actual child. Correction, their only child. Let me back up a second. We live in a cozy suburban neighborhood in Vermont, the kind where snow actually sticks around during the holidays, and the neighbors compete to see who can get their Christmas lights up first. We've got a 2-story house, a golden retriever named Muffin, and a family tradition of decorating the tree together while watching Home Alone. Every single year, I hang the angel on top of the tree. It's my thing, but this year, Tyler did it without asking. My mom even clapped. "Oh, you've got such a good eye for detail, Tyler." She gushed like he'd just cured cancer instead of placing a piece of plastic on a branch. That was the first red flag. The second, my stocking, handmade by my grandma before she passed, red velvet, gold stitching, my name sewn in cursive across the top. Except this year, when I pulled it from the decoration box, it didn't say Ellie anymore. It said Tyler. I stood there holding it like someone had replaced my name with a gravestone. "I brought it to my mom. Where's mine?" I asked. She blinked. "Oh, sweetheart, it must be in the attic. We'll look later." We never did. From that moment on, it was like I was watching a bizarre Christmas-themed horror movie where I was the invisible ghost haunting my own family. They let Tyler open the first gift on Christmas morning, a tradition that's been mine since I was 5. He got a PS5. I got a sweater, 2 sizes too big. When I asked my dad if he wanted to help me build the snow fort we always build together, he said, "Why don't you let Tyler show us what he's got?" It was like the more attention they gave him, the less they had for me. Like love was a battery, and he was sucking it all up. And Tyler. He played the part perfectly, polite, charming, too perfect. Like he knew what he was doing. He started calling my mom Mom by Christmas Day, and she didn't correct him. She smiled. I thought maybe I was imagining things. Being jealous, selfish, I mean, he was a foster kid. Maybe they were just trying to make him feel at home. But that theory crashed and burned the night after Christmas dinner when I went to get some leftover pie from the fridge. I found Tyler in the kitchen, alone, in the dark, just standing there. When he turned, he was smiling. But not like a normal smile. His eyes weren't smiling. "You know," he said, "they seem a lot happier now." I froze. "What, your parents?" he clarified. "It's like, I'm what they always wanted." I didn't know what to say. So I just stood there, heart pounding in my ears. Then he leaned closer, and in the quietest voice imaginable, he added, "Maybe they just needed someone better." Then he walked out. Just like that, like it was his kitchen, his house. I stood there for 10 minutes, still holding the fridge door open, pie forgotten, breath shallow. That's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit all week. Tyler didn't want a family. He wanted mine. And for some reason, my parents were letting him take it. Tyler moved in 2 days before Christmas. By December 28th, he had my bedroom, my parents' trust, and somehow their entire attention, while I couldn't even get them to answer a text. It was like I'd been erased, literally. On the 29th, I found a new family photo in the living room frame, the kind we update every year after Christmas. Only this time I wasn't in it. Just Mom, Dad, and Tyler, smiling like a Hallmark ad. I blinked, checked again. Nope, not photoshopped. It was real. When did you take that? I asked, holding up the frame like it was a crime scene. Oh, Mom said vaguely, not even looking up from her tablet. Tyler suggested we snap a quick pic while you were out. You were at the store, remember? I remembered. They'd sent me for more whipped cream, for Tyler's favorite hot chocolate. It stung more than it should have. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to the day after Christmas. That's when things started to go from weird to wrong. I'd been saving cash from babysitting all semester, over $300, stashed in a zipper pouch in the bottom drawer of my desk. I was planning to finally buy myself a drawing tablet. When I checked it on the 26th, gone. I tore my room apart. Mattress flipped, drawers yanked, every hoodie pocket turned inside out. Nothing. At dinner, I tried to bring it up casually. Has anyone seen a gray zip pouch? Says NASA on it. Tyler barely looked up from his steak. Nope. Mom didn't even blink. Maybe you misplaced it, hon. I don't misplace money, especially not that money, but what could I do? Accuse the new golden child. 2 days after he moved in, I caught him glancing at me across the table. Not a smirk, not a glare, just watching. 2 nights later, I was coming down the stairs around midnight to get water when I heard whispering from the den. Tyler's voice. At first, I thought he was gaming, but the screen was off. No controller in sight. He was pacing the room, phone to his ear. I couldn't hear the other side of the call, but his side chilled me. No, they're clueless. No, she suspects something, but it's fine. Look, I said I've got it under control. I froze. I leaned closer, just enough to catch one more sentence. Yeah, I'll send it by Friday. Then I stepped on the one creaky stair. He turned sharp fast. Ellie, he said, too casual. You okay? I nodded, heart hammering, mouth dry. Just water. He smiled. Smart. Hydration is important. Who talks like that? The next day, I casually asked Mom if Tyler had a phone plan. Of course, she said, rinsing dishes. We added him to ours. Why? I shrugged. No reason. But now I was sure. Something was off. It was January 2nd when I heard Tyler telling my dad a story about his old foster home. They used to lock up the fridge, he said, like it was a punchline. We had to ask for permission just to get milk. Dad shook his head, furious on his behalf. Not here, son. Your home is your home now. It would have been touching if I hadn't heard a different version 2 days earlier. Back on Christmas Eve, he'd told me his foster family let us raid the fridge at 2 a.m. if we wanted to. I joked about our house being the opposite. So which was it? Locked fridge or midnight snacks? I kept track of every inconsistency after that. Tyler was full of them. Sometimes he claimed to be homeschooled. Other times he talked about crazy high school teachers. One day he said he'd lived in 5 foster homes. Later he said 3. When I pointed it out to my mom, "Oh, Ellie," she said, giving me that condescending smile I hate, "he's been through a lot. Trauma can make memory foggy." Right. But if I forgot something, I was being lazy or irresponsible. The hypocrisy was starting to boil. By January 3rd, I wasn't sleeping well. I'd wake up around 3 a.m. Most nights heart pounding, sometimes from nightmares, sometimes from nothing. I kept seeing that empty photo frame, hearing his voice. Maybe they just needed someone better. Worse than the fear, though, was the loneliness. I tried talking to my parents, really talking. Do you even realize how different things are since he got here? I asked them one night while they watched a documentary with Tyler, my favorite show, which they had never watched with me. My mom barely turned her head. "Sweetheart, we know this is an adjustment. You're just feeling displaced. Like a piece of furniture, I looked at my dad. Dad, he He just sighed. Can't you try being happy for someone else for once? Like I was the villain in all this? Like I was the selfish one? Tyler sat there, silent, sipping cocoa like he wasn't hearing any of it. I went upstairs and cried into my pillow so hard it felt like my chest might cave in. I didn't recognize my life anymore. Worse, I didn't recognize my parents. I started keeping a notebook, writing everything down, times, dates, quotes. I wasn't sure what I was building, a case, a diary, proof that I wasn't crazy. On January 5th, I found my first solid lead. I was cleaning the upstairs bathroom, Tyler's turn, actually, but of course he said he forgot, when I noticed something stuck behind the cabinet drawer. A receipt from a pawn shop. It was dated December 27th. Item, graphics tablet, lightly used. My stomach dropped. I raced to my room, the NAS. A pouch was still gone, of course, but the math worked. He pawned my tablet, the one I was going to buy, before I even had the chance. I brought the receipt to my mom. She barely glanced at it. You probably dropped it somewhere. Tyler said he hasn't even been near your room. I stared at her. It's a pawn receipt with his name on it. I don't think you realize how stressful it's been for all of us. She snapped. Tyler is doing his best to fit in. Maybe you should try too. That's when I stopped arguing. If I wanted answers or justice, I'd have to get them myself. And I would, because the more I watched Tyler, the more I noticed it. Those tiny cracks in the perfect act. The too polite tone, the carefully calculated compliments, the way he always knew exactly what my parents wanted to hear. No one's that perfect, no one trying that hard is being honest. He wasn't just a foster kid, he was a fraud. And I was going to prove it, no matter what it took. I caught him red-handed in my room, going through my drawers. And somehow, he still smiled at me like I was the one intruding. It was January 7th, the first night it snowed heavy enough to cancel school. Mom and Dad were downstairs watching a movie with hot cocoa, his favorite kind, of course mint with cinnamon, and I'd gone upstairs to grab my sketchbook. But when I opened the door to my room, there he was, Tyler, kneeling at my desk, my top drawer open, flashlight in hand. Not even pretending to be subtle, I froze. What the hell are you doing? He didn't flinch, just slowly stood up, placed something in his hoodie pocket, and gave me that perfectly disarming smile. Your mom asked me to grab her sewing kit, said it might be in here. It was almost impressive, the confidence of the lie. No pause, no stammer. My mom doesn't sew. Hasn't since I was 10, and that drawer, that's where I kept things that mattered. Old photos, cards, my grandma's locket, things no one touches but me. I stepped forward. Give it back. He raised a brow, pretending not to know what I meant. Whatever you took, give it back. He hesitated just long enough to confirm it, then shrugged, pulled something out of his hoodie and tossed it on the bed. It was the locket, my grandmother's. She left it to me in her will. It's the one thing I've guarded since she passed. I picked it up and stared at him, my fingers shaking. Why were you taking this? I wasn't taking it, he said coolly. I was just curious. Get out. He moved toward the door but stopped in the doorway. You know, he said, not even looking back, you might want to start locking your door. Some people around here are a little paranoid. And then he walked out. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, turning it over and over in my head. Why the locket? Why now? Something clicked. The inheritance. Grandma's will. I hadn't thought about it in months. She passed away over the summer, and while there wasn't a fortune, she'd left behind a few valuable heirlooms, the locket, a first edition book collection, and a small trust fund meant for Ellie, for college or art school. It was spelled out in the letter her lawyer had read to us. I remember because she made me promise not to let anyone pressure me into spending it on boring practical stuff. It wasn't a lot, about $15.00, but it was mine. And now Tyler had been digging through my things and taking that. I needed proof, something real. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through his stuff. The next morning, while my parents and Tyler were out at the grocery store buying almond milk, because Tyler's lactose sensitive, I slipped into his room. He kept it military neat, bed tight, nothing on the floor, backpack perfectly zipped, but the drawer under his bed. Bingo. Inside, a folder of printed documents, folded receipts, and a small leather journal. And there, clipped to a paper-marked confirmation of transfer, was my name. My full legal name, next to a bank account I'd never seen before, with a line that read, "Trust funds successfully consolidated under guardian oversight. Beneficiary, Tyler James Rowe." I sat down on his bed, staring at the paper like it might vanish if I blinked. Consolidated, guardian oversight. That's when I saw the forged signature. It looked like mine, but it wasn't mine. He'd faked it. He'd faked a signature to reroute my college money into an account he controlled. I flipped through the folder faster now, heart pounding in my ears. There were emails printed and highlighted between Tyler and someone named D. Rowe, a relative. No, wait, one email caught my eye. From Tyler Rowe 16 at Gmail.com to D. Rowe, consulting at Mail. Com subject, funds transfer, it's done. The parents didn't even question it. She's too emotional to notice. Once the next phase is cleared, we're out. The parents didn't even question it. They knew, or worse, they'd helped. I dropped the folder like it had burned me. My stomach twisted in a way I'd never felt before. Betrayal that went so deep it didn't even feel real yet. It was like I was dreaming, like none of it could possibly be happening. My parents, the ones who used to show up at every art show, every school conference, even when they had to leave work early. They handed over my inheritance to a boy they'd known for 3 weeks. No, there had to be more to it. A misunderstanding, a legal technicality, something. I ran downstairs, folder in hand, and waited for the front door to open. The second they walked in, I held the papers out like a weapon. What is this? Mom looked stunned. Dad blinked. Tyler just tilted his head, calm as ever. Where did you get that? My mom asked, voice suddenly cold. In his room, I snapped, where he's hiding proof that you signed over Grandma's money to him. Why would you do that? Dad started to speak, but Tyler stepped in first. Ellie, maybe you're confused. Shut up. I shouted, louder than I ever have in my life. You've been lying since the second you got here. Don't pretend now. Then I turned to my parents. Why are you letting this happen? He stole from me. He forged my name. You have to see that. They didn't say anything. Mom just looked tired. Dad rubbed his temples, and then Mom said something that broke me more than any of it. He needs it more than you do. Just like that. As if it were obvious, as if that justified everything. Tyler's had a hard life. He doesn't have family to rely on. Ellie, he deserves a fresh start, a real future. So you gave him mine. It's just money, she said quietly. No, it wasn't. It was Grandma's last gift to me, my dream of art school, my safety net, my future, and they handed it over like it was a spare toothbrush. Tyler stepped forward. Ellie, I didn't mean for it to go this way. I thought you'd understand eventually. I stared at him, shaking. Understand what? That you conned your way into my family, stole my money, and made my parents forget I exist. He didn't answer. Because there was no answer, only silence, the kind that's so heavy it swallows everything. I turned and walked upstairs before they could say anything else. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. I'm not going to let him win. He can fake charm, steal money, twist my parents around his finger. But he messed with the wrong girl, and I was done playing nice. I used to think betrayal came with shouting. Like, if the people who loved you turned their backs, it would come with slamming doors and screaming matches, and I never want to see you again, echoing down hallways. But the worst part of being replaced, it's quiet. It's sitting across from your parents at the dinner table while they pass mashed potatoes to him and pretend nothing's wrong. It's hearing your mom laugh at his jokes, even though you haven't made her smile in weeks. It's opening your sketchbook and realizing you haven't drawn in days because every time you pick up a pencil, it feels pointless. That night, after they said he needed my inheritance more than I didn't cry. I stared at my ceiling for hours, fists clenched under the blanket, my heart too numb to even ache. Because crying would have meant I still expected them to choose me. I didn't, not anymore. The next morning, everything looked normal. Dad was sipping his coffee, scrolling on his phone. Mom was folding laundry. Tyler was watching cartoons with a bowl of cereal like a 10-year-old. No one even mentioned the confrontation from the night before, like it had been a bad dream, or worse, something too inconvenient to deal with. I walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and found my favorite cereal gone. Again, I stood there, fingers gripping the counter so hard they hurt, and just stared at the empty shelf. That's when it happened, the shift. It wasn't a dramatic lightning bolt or some inspirational music moment. It was quiet, steady, like the way snow falls before a storm. Calm, but heavy with warning. This wasn't going to stop. Not unless I stopped it. I couldn't undo what Tyler had taken, but I could make sure he never took anything else. And I could make damn sure he didn't walk away clean. What pushed me over the edge wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the message I found in Grandma's old voicemail inbox. She had this ancient phone. She barely used the one I'd kept in my desk drawer, because I liked hearing her voice on it sometimes. I charged it up, almost by accident, while digging through my things, trying to feel like me again. And there it was, a message from 6 months ago, the week before she died. Hi, Ellie. Bug. I know your parents think I should keep things fair, but I'm not leaving that trust to them. They've never really seen you, not the way I do. I want you to live, baby. Go be the artist I never got to be, and don't let anyone tell you it's not practical. Practical is boring. You're brilliant. I dropped the phone. Then I picked it back up and listened to it again. And again. That was it. That was my fire starter. I wasn't just fighting for revenge now. I was fighting for her. For the version of me she believed in. The one I'd almost forgotten. I stared at myself in the mirror that night, red eyes, messy bun, hoodie I hadn't washed in a week, and whispered, "Let's get to work." Tyler was smart, smooth, manipulative, but he was also arrogant. He thought he had me beat, thought I'd give up and disappear into the background while he played golden boy. That was his mistake. Because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight loud. I was going to ruin him, quietly, the same way he'd ruined me. Step 1, proof. I already had the forged bank documents, the pawn receipt with my handwriting faked on the transaction form, and now Grandma's voicemail. But I needed more, so I started watching him. I became a shadow in my own home. When Tyler left his room, I checked where he'd been. I tracked his fake study sessions and followed the browser history he was too careless to delete. And I found it, an online forum, private, encrypted, for teens in the foster system to swap advice on survival strategies. But Tyler's posts weren't about survival. They were about grifting. Under the username Rowrunner, he wrote about soft entries and inheritance diversions, even shared tips for winning over emotionally desperate guardians. One post chilled me to the bone. If you can find a family with dead grandparents and no wills locked down, jackpot. Bonus if the bio, kids artsy or unstable, no one believes the emotional one. Unstable? That's how he wanted them to see me, and it was working. I needed something public, something undeniable. Tyler was careful, but he was also greedy, so I baited him. I left a fake note in my sketchbook, a reminder, to check my old iPad for scanned copies of my grandma's will and legal documents. I left it on my desk. I waited. Then I left the house, made sure he saw me leave, and doubled back through the back gate, slipping into the garage and accessing the hidden camera feed on our old security system. What I recorded made my skin crawl. He went straight into my room the second I was gone. He opened my desk drawer, found the iPad, and started scrolling through it like he had every right. Then he smiled, like he'd won, like I didn't even exist. I recorded everything, saved backups, sent copies to myself, my aunt, who's a lawyer, and uploaded it to a private Google Drive titled Evidence Against Tyler. Then I waited. Not long now. I used to want them to believe me, to choose me, to see me, but now I just want the truth in the light. If they still don't see it after that, then that's on them. Because the girl who begged for scraps of attention, she's gone, replaced, and not by Tyler, by someone stronger, smarter, fiercer, me. Tyler still walks around like he owns the place. But I watch him differently now. Not like prey watching a predator, but like a storm watching a liar build a house of cards. Because I know what's coming. I know who he really is, and soon everyone else will too. By the time I laid it all out on my bedroom floor, receipts, screenshots, the voicemail, the forged transfer, I felt less like a victim and more like someone assembling a case file. That's exactly what I called it, my case file. Everything had a place, everything had a purpose. Tyler still walked around the house with that smug little tilt of his head, as if he'd put the whole thing together and we were all in his play. But he hadn't counted on me being methodical. He'd counted on charm, not on paperwork. He'd counted on my parents' softness, not on my stubbornness. I made a plan in 4 parts: gather, trap, expose, and secure. Each step had boxes to check, people to loop in, and risks to anticipate. I couldn't win on whispers. I needed proof so clean a judge would blink if he saw it. I photographed the pawn receipt, scanned the forged transfer, and backed them up in 3 places: a password, protected cloud, an encrypted USB hidden in my sketchbook, and an emailed copy to my aunt, Laura, my mom's sister, who I'd quietly looped in because she's a lawyer, and she loves me enough to hate injustice. My aunt agreed to call a forensic handwriting analyst she trusted. If the signature on the transfer was a fake, I wanted someone who could say it out loud in court, forged. She also promised to reach out to a contact at the pawn shop to confirm the transaction and pull CCTV from December 27th. Pawn shops don't like admitting mistakes, but they hate lawyering up worse. I saved screenshots of his Row Runner posts from that forum, using my phone's timestamp feature so nothing could be altered. I also exported the email exchanges I'd found in his folder. If he was coordinating with someone higher up that row from the email, I wanted to trace it. I kept a log. Dates he was welcomed into rooms that used to be mine. Times my parents ignored me, who bought what for him. If I could show a pattern, emotional manipulation plus financial transfer, it would be harder to gaslight into misunderstanding. I did all this with surgical quiet. I pretended to be the same upset kid they could ignore. Inside, I was assembling a machine. Tyler's greatest weakness wasn't lack of skill. It was arrogance. He loved to be admired. He loved to be trusted. That's where he let his guard down. I left a fake but believable notation in my sketchbook about hidden files on the old iPad, wills, and documents. It was exactly the lure he'd taken before. This time I'd be watching. I rigged the old voice recorder I used for sketching notes hidden in a hollow, doubt paint jar. It wasn't invasive. It simply recorded any confession he might make when he thought he was alone. I also set my laptop to mirror the security camera I'd already linked into my cloud. If he went for something again, I'd have him on tape. I arranged for a family meeting, but not with the intent to beg. I invited my Aunt Laura under the guise of asking for advice about college financing. She said she'd stop by that Sunday for coffee. I didn't tell my parents why exactly. I did this because having her in the house would tighten his composure, and if he slipped, she'd act immediately. I didn't want to humiliate my parents. I wanted the theft and the lies exposed so they couldn't simply fold them into denial. My aunt planned to request records, bank transfer trails, pawn shop CCTV, and the pawn ledger entries. If the pawn shop caved, that would tie Tyler physically to my belongings. If the bank saw suspicious transfers and a forged signature, they could freeze accounts pending investigation. If the legal steps stalled, I planned a quieter social exposure, a printed timeline given to family and a few key people. My favorite art teacher, who would hate seeing me stolen from, counselor at school, someone who'd testified to my character, and the neighbor who'd known Grandma. Reputation matters when your guardian tries to rewrite history. I saved the loudest option, posting the evidence on social media, for only if law and personal appeals failed. Viral revenge sounds dramatic in videos, but I knew it could wreck more than Tyler. That's why I kept it as a last resort, effective but dangerous. While I hunted proof, I also protected my future. With my aunt's help, I opened a custodial account in my name that required multiple signatures. Grandma's trust could not be redirected again. Aunt Laura introduced me to a guardian, ad litem she trusted, someone who could petition the court if necessary to freeze any transfers and represent my interests. I told 2 friends what I was doing, not because I needed them to act, but because isolation makes conspiracy look like delusion. 2 witnesses meant sanity. Each day I checked boxes, but Tyler still strutted like a king. He sat at the head of the table and narrated family stories with my dad laughing along. He got packages, we didn't. He'd throw me a look now and then, half smug, half petulant, like I was a stubborn fly he might swat. That's why the most dangerous days were the quiet ones. He felt untouchable. The house was still his stage. But there was a shift I could feel, a tightening in his posture when I mentioned my aunt casually, a hesitation when he thought I was distracted. Arrogance is brittle. It cracks when the first reliable person calls it out. 2 nights before the planned family meeting, Tyler cornered me in the hall. "You're really trying to get me kicked out, aren't you?" he said, smiling like it was a joke. I didn't answer. I just slid my phone across the hallway counter, screen locked to an email thread where he boasted about consolidating funds. He read it for the first time. His smile faltered. "Where did you get that?" he hissed. "Everywhere," I said simply. "And now you either explain it, or you watch your whole story fall apart." He was still in control in the sense that he could decide to double down, to confess, to run. But that whole control feeling, it was a mirage I'd started to puncture. The nights grew colder. The house hummed with the small noises of a life that had been rearranged. I felt for the first time, not like someone begging to be seen, but like someone who could make people look. And when they looked, they wouldn't like what they saw. Next up, the family meeting, the trap would snap. The legal calls would begin, and either my parents would wake up, or they'd choose him, and I'd have to drag the truth into the light myself. I wasn't naive. This fight would break things, but some things are worth breaking for, because you don't steal someone's life and get to keep the house. You don't replace a daughter and keep the name over the stocking, not if she's decided to be relentless. The house felt smaller that morning, like the walls had been waiting for something to break. The air smelled like wet coats and burnt toast, ordinary things that now seemed obscene. I sat at the kitchen table with my Aunt Laura beside me, my sketchbook closed but heavy, my phone buzzing with copies of files I'd sent to myself at 3 in the morning. Aunt Laura was all business, hair in a tight bun, blazer buttoned, voice that made people listen. She'd brought a small stack of paper, subpoena forms, a printout from the pawn shop with a time, stamped CCTV still, and an email thread from the D. Row address with Tyler's messages highlighted like arteries. Ready? She asked, but it wasn't a question. I nodded. Mom was in the living room, pretending at normalcy, folding a towel with her lips pressed thin. Dad shuffled in like he hadn't slept. Tyler bounded down the stairs, bright, confident, clutching his cereal bowl like a trophy. "What's this about?" he asked, voice light. I stood up. My knees felt steady. The kid who cried into her pillow 3 weeks ago would have run. The girl in front of them didn't. Aunt Laura wanted to talk, I said. Mom's eyes registered something for the first time, curiosity, then worry. Dad straightened. Tyler's smile didn't falter. Family meeting. Dad asked, "Is this official?" Aunt Laura said, and slid a subpoena across the table like a magician revealing the card. A beat, then another. Tyler's face changed the way clouds change before a storm, fast and undeniable. He swallowed. He put down his cereal without sloshing it. Aunt Laura stood. "Officer Mills is on the way. I've also contacted the pawn shop and the bank. We have CCTV, a serial number on the pawned item, and copies of emails showing unauthorized transfers. We also have your forum posts, Mr. Rowe. We have a handwriting analysis booked for this morning." She looked at Mom and Dad. "You should probably sit down." Mom sat as if her legs had been cut out from under her. Dad's jaw worked like he was chewing a stone. "You can't," Tyler said, voice small now. "You can." Aunt Laura said, "You already did." I watched them. Watched the way Tyler's bravado fell into the hollows. Watched my parents' faces collapse into a blend of disbelief and betrayal so sharp it looked like a physical wound. "Officer Mills," someone said from the doorway. The officer filled the threshold like a silhouette with a badge. He was younger than I expected, calm but with an authority that made the air hum. "Ma'am," he said to Aunt Laura, "we received your call. We'll need to ask Mr. Rowe some questions." Tyler's eyes darted to Dad. He moved toward him like a kid seeking a shield. Dad took a step back, suddenly uncertain. Officer Mills read the basic charges aloud in the living room like lines from a script. Fraud, forgery, theft. The words landed like stones. The house seemed to inhale. My mom started to cry then. Silent at first, deep, gasping breaths that made her shoulders shake. "Ellie," she whispered to me, and I felt the old woman I'd loved peek behind the new fog of judgment. But when she spoke, it wasn't in defense of me. It was a tremulous apology to Tyler. We only wanted to help. Aunt Laura didn't flinch. Helping is not forging signatures and transferring funds unlawfully. The pawn shop manager arrived within the hour, embarrassed and defensive, but there was no hiding CCTV. A grainy video of Tyler at our house at 2 in the morning, placing something on the counter, then carrying a small velvet pouch out the door. The timestamps matched the receipt. The item's serial number matched the locket's hidden engraving, a tiny E. My grandma had tucked on the inner clasp. Tyler's face had no color left. When Officer Mills asked, he tried to speak. I needed the money. I didn't mean you meant to take it." Aunt Laura said. "You meant to take my niece's inheritance. You forged her name to move funds into an account you controlled. You posted about this scheme online. You conned my sister and father, and you stole a girl's future." He broke then. Not loudly, not with the cinematic confession I'd imagined, but with the small crumpling noise of a kid whose game finally had consequences. He apologized, he cried. He claimed he'd been desperate. He said he'd been promised help by D. Rowe, a name that turned out to be a secondary suspect living 2 states away who organized placements. For kids like Tyler with people who'd do anything for a story of redemption. The lawyer said the things you expect lawyers to say. Keep quiet. Don't sign anything without counsel. We'll cooperate. The officer cuffed Tyler with surprising gentleness. My stomach dropped not because I wanted to watch him taken away, but because I finally felt something real, accountability. Then came the worst part for my parents. The bank froze the accounts the moment they heard the handwriting expert's preliminary call. The transfer couldn't be reversed overnight, but the bank placed holds and flagged suspicious activity. The pawn shop agreed to return the locket as evidence pending charges. A judge issued a temporary restraining order on the account transfers. The wheels that had been so smoothly greased by Tyler's audacity started to grind. Neighbors who'd been watching from behind curtains appeared at the front door like a tide. Mrs. Hargreaves from next door, Grandma's knitting group, clutched my arm and said, "I've known you since you were a baby, Ellie. We'll help you." My art teacher texted, "Need anything? I'll testify." The counselor at school called to offer a statement about my character and the stress I'd shown since January. The humiliation came slow and then all at once. My parents sat across from me while friends, neighbors, and a policeman moved among our furniture like storm damage assessors. People who'd once said, "What a lovely family," now spoke in whispers. The sheriff's deputy asked Dad about signature verification. Dad said he trusted the paperwork, which read on paper like an admission. He'd signed what he thought were routine guardianship forms because Tyler seemed to need them. Aunt Laura's face never softened. They signed because they were persuaded, she said quietly, but persuasion doesn't erase illegal actions. Mom looked at me. "We thought we were doing something good." "I know," I said, my voice steady, the way it had been for weeks. But doing something good doesn't include stealing. It doesn't include lying about a child's future. Tyler's arrest didn't fix everything. The house didn't snap back into place. My stocking still had no name sewn in that day. But when the deputy closed the car door behind Tyler, his shoulders stooped in a way that made my chest ache. For reasons that had nothing to do with justice. There was a kind of hush afterward. The neighbors drifted away. The pawn shop gave me the locket back. Its velvet case crushed, but the engraving still there. Aunt Laura made me hold it like I'd been given a relic. I closed my hand over it until my fingers went numb and felt, for the first time in weeks, like something inside had unclenched. The legal machinery would move slow from here. Investigations would take time. The bank might recover money. D. Rowe might be traced. There would be hearings, perhaps charges, maybe civil suits. But the most important thing had happened in my parents' living room in front of people who mattered. The truth had been seen. Dad sat in the doorway, hands over his face, finally unguarded. Mom came and sat next to me on the couch, but she didn't reach for my hand. Instead, she folded her own hands in her lap and looked at the locket. "I'm sorry," she said, small and raw. "We were fools, maybe," I said. "Maybe you were, but we're not done." Aunt Laura squeezed my shoulder. "You did this right, Ellie. You were careful. You protected the evidence. You gave them a chance. Legally, you did everything you needed. Tyler was led away." Dad sat shelled and hollowed. Mom's mouth worked around words that fell short. The house was quieter than before, but cleaner somehow. The lies couldn't hide in corners anymore. Outside, snow began to fall. It dusted the car roofs and coated the tops of the mailboxes, ordinary and indifferent. Inside, I put Grandma's locket against my heart and felt the smallest, fiercest light of her voice in my ear. Go be the artist I never got to be. I allowed myself one short, imperfect laugh, half relief, half a sob. The storm had broken, but there would be cleanup. There would be consequences and court dates and maybe more hurt. But for the first time since Christmas, I felt like I had a future I could fight for. And that, more than anything, felt like revenge worth taking. You know that moment in a movie, right after the villain is caught, the police lights fade and everything goes quiet. That weird, weightless second where justice should feel like a victory, but you still feel hollow. That was me. For about a week, after Tyler was arrested, the house felt like a crime scene. Not physically, no broken windows or smashed furniture, but emotionally. Every room was heavy with what we let happen, or rather what they let happen. I wasn't interested in forgiveness yet. I wasn't interested in pretending we were still a family. I was interested in the truth and justice. And my future. Tyler didn't say a word on his way out, not to me, not to my parents, not even to the officer cuffing him. Turns out D. Rowe wasn't a family member. He was an online identity used by another con artist who'd coached foster teens into charming vulnerable families for financial gain. Tyler had fallen in with the wrong person at the wrong time, or maybe the right person if your goal was to rob someone blind. The court case didn't take long. Proven, confirmed, returned to me and used as primary evidence. The bank recovered about 80% of the funds. The rest, gone, used for Tyler's fresh start, shopping sprees, gaming gear, a phone I never got an upgrade for, and a $500 winter coat I once asked for and was told was too expensive. He pled guilty, took a plea deal, juvenile sentencing with restitution requirements, meaning the next several years of his life would be spent paying back the future he tried to steal. Poetic, a little, satisfying, almost, but I wasn't done yet. With Aunt Laura's help, I petitioned to legally protect Grandma's trust. It's now locked in my name, irrevocable, uncontestable, untouchable. I applied to art schools, the kind of schools I'd once been told were a gamble. I got accepted into 3. I chose the one with the studio space that smelled like turpentine and old ambition. The same week I accepted my offer, my art teacher invited me to present my portfolio to a youth panel. One of the judges bought 2 pieces. That night, I hung Grandma's locket by my bed. She would have been proud. We haven't magically healed. They're still the same people who let a stranger into our home, ignored every red flag, and gave away my future like it was a Christmas gift they could rewrap for someone shinier. But they're not unrepentant, not anymore. They apologized every day for weeks. Through tears, through silence, through quiet dinners where I said nothing, and they let the weight of that silence hang. My mom started therapy. She said she needed to understand why she wanted so badly to believe in Tyler, why she ignored her own daughter's instincts to chase the rescue story. My dad stopped saying we meant well. He started saying we were wrong. That mattered more than I expected. They've been trying to earn back my trust, not demand it, not expect it, just try. That's all I can ask right now. 2 days before I left for college, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside, a short note in Tyler's handwriting. I was trying to survive, but I became exactly what I hated. I'm sorry, Ellie. You didn't deserve what I did. You didn't deserve to be forgotten. I read it once. Then I folded it and tucked it in the bottom drawer of my sketch desk, behind an old, cracked pastel box. That's where it belongs, part of the story, not part of me. I used to think betrayal came out of nowhere, that it was loud and obvious and final, but real betrayal, it's quiet, it wears a smile. It compliments your drawings and asks for your cereal while it steals from your future. But the best revenge, it's not just getting justice. It's living better. It's reclaiming every scrap of the life they tried to take. It's thriving loudly in front of the people who underestimated you. It's not being the forgotten one. It's becoming the one they can never forget. Tyler tried to rewrite my story, tried to erase me from my own family, my own future. But in the end, he didn't steal my life. He gave me the pen back, and this time, I'm the one writing the ending. Have you ever been replaced? Lied to, betrayed by the very people who should have protected you? I see you, and I believe you. Let's talk about it in the comments below. I'll be reading every story. Speech Balloon, don't forget to hit subscribe for more revenge stories that prove truth always wins in the end. And if you really felt this story, share it. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone. Until next time, protect your peace, trust your gut, and never, ever let someone else write your story for you.